and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Yuthie?
Yes.
Mr. Rettenhausen?
Yes.
Mr. Staub?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes. All right, welcome everyone. We have quite a few things on our agenda tonight to talk about. We have quite a few people signed in for the visitors log, so we'll limit each speaker to 5 minutes or less. When your time is up, we'll let you know. We'll get right to it. Christina Clark.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. My name is Christina Clark. I am a mom of a soon-to-be 5th grader and 3rd grader. I am here today in regards of our teachers. It recently became knowledge to many parents in the district that 2 well-known and respected teachers are being reassigned into new positions for the 2021-22 school year. These teachers in question chose to remotely teach for this current year. I also understand that not many teachers volunteered to teach remotely. I have my own concerns as to whether my daughter's remote teacher was even a certified educator. The district's website did not indicate whether or not that is the case. It is my understanding that the music, PE, and art teacher for PES were assigned new roles for their unpredictable year. And all these teachers should be commended for their flexibility in making this year a success. These educators I mentioned will all be moving back to their previous positions for the 2021-22 school year. Now my question is specifically, why has the board chosen to reassign Mr. Pettmuller and Mrs. Clayton to new positions when their previously assigned positions for 2019-2020 are being posted on the district website as vacant? Why is the school administration choosing to hire externally from the district when there are 2 well-qualified educators who have earned the right to reclaim their positions where they excel? I firmly believe my son having Mr. Pettmuller for the last 2 years has had a positive impact on his education and his disposition towards school. For a child who is often bored in the classroom, Stephen was much more engaged and attentive in his classes. I definitely can see the difference in his willingness and his excitement to attend classes. Few teachers come into our lives and make a lifelong impression. In my own personal experience, I only have a handful. Mr. Pettmuller in particular will be one of those for my son. They had a bond that was wonderful to see, one that allowed my son to be more social and outgoing and offering his opinions on class-related subjects. Mr. Pettmuller kept my child engaged and excited to come to the classroom. Sometimes that has been lacking in previous years. As parents, educators, board members, and administrators, is it not our duty to make sure our future students have these experiences and opportunities as well? I am requesting that Mr. Pettmuller and Mrs. Clayton be allowed to have the chance to once again resume their previous teaching positions at Piatone Elementary School. I would like to thank you for listening and understanding my concerns. We also have a petition of 76 signatures that also had signed that they think that they should also still have their previous positions, and I have a few other statements from people who also have wanted me to speak on their behalf. I am a former student of Piatone Schools, and I want the teachers to feel safe and protected in their community. They shouldn't live in fear of losing their jobs or possibly contracting COVID. Please have a heart and help these teachers. Also, my daughter had Mr. Pettmuller and he was amazing. I hope this can be stopped. No teacher deserves this. I am ashamed of the board members for doing this. Somebody else said teachers need our support, and one other. Teachers who impact our child's lives in such a positive way should be treated with the respect they deserve and not penalized for doing what they feel is right, safe, and smart for their own personal safety and those around them during a worldwide pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy, is it Christy Miller?
Last March, when we went to emergency learning, my daughter had met a new to her teacher via online learning, while I had one child in each bedroom on laptops and my 2 younger ones at the kitchen table with me sharing a laptop and my cell phone to learn. I would hear the lessons being given as I helped my 2 youngest navigate their school days at home online. One day I heard this male voice talking about pizza and fractions. My daughter was smiling and laughing and fully engaged. I peeked over at her screen, and this teacher had actually cooked pizza, and he was cutting them to teach about fractions. I was intrigued. Day after day, I would hear his lessons and enjoy them just as much as my daughter did. His lessons were fun, engaging, entertaining, and very educational at the same time. The kids hardly realized they were learning, yet they were learning so much. Have you ever had one of those teachers? One that falls into the favorite or unforgettable, but in a good way category? This was him. His name is Mr. Petmuller. My daughter looked forward to his online classes. The following school year, my daughter was transitioning from PES to PIC. She also was going to be remote, so we had no idea who her teachers would be or how they would, or what remote would be like. She was a nervous wreck, and I was silently nervous for her, while outwardly reassuring her it was all going to be okay and I'd be right by her side to help her through it. When we found out who her teachers were, her face lit up with excitement. Mr. Petmuller? I love Mr. Petmuller. Yay! I don't know Mrs. Clayton though. But my youngest son chimed in and said, I had Mrs. Clayton at PES for foundations. She's nice. I like her. I don't like foundations, but I like her. This put her immediately at ease. My daughter, to be honest, doesn't love school. She does love the social-emotional aspect, like recess, but most kids do. She tends to lose focus and interest if she's not engaged. If she sees cues that her teacher isn't in it 100%, she definitely won't be in it 100%. She wants a teacher that cares enough to call her out if she's slacking, but also recognize when she is shining. And I know that with the teacher-to-student ratio, that's a big ask, but that's how she is. She notices everything and wants her teachers to also. Mr. Petmuller did all that and then some. I remember the first virtual parent-teacher conference when he was explaining how he was trying to work on all aspects of his students. He was trying to help them find ways to socialize, interact, even though they couldn't gather in person. How he wanted to get to know their strengths and weaknesses and what their goals and wants and needs were. How he was willing to take calls any time of day and no questions were silly questions. How he wanted to be available to help them if they needed extra help, and so on. He truly delivered on all of this in every way. He did all of this while giving quality education and still managed to make it fun. Then you have Mrs. Clayton. Mrs. Clayton is like a mama bear to her students. She's firm enough that they respect her, but she's always kind and speaks with a gentle voice. You can tell she genuinely cares for her students and wants to see them succeed. Both teachers work together on special occasions to do class parties. They didn't have room moms or helpers. They put together activities and fun-filled days so that the remote learners never felt slighted that they weren't in person. They gave out special prizes and shared many laughs with the kids. So why am I here? I'm here because you need to know that, first of all, Mrs. Clayton should be able to stay in her original position pre-COVID in her last year before her retirement. Her respect was earned. Therefore, respect should be given to her. Between her tenure, her rapport, her love for her students, she doesn't deserve this slap in the face of being replaced in her last year with our school district. Because let's face it, that's what it is. It's a slap in the face. Mr. Petmuller should be consistent in one classroom. He's the type of teacher that can make a huge impact on children's lives. He's the teacher that when kids get their teacher assignments each year, kids are hoping they get him. Bouncing him around from classroom to classroom as a sub, that will not be using him in a capacity that will have the same impact. Not only that, but with his spotless record,
Thank you, Mrs. Moore.
I'm sorry, I didn't think that we had time limits.
Yeah, I announced it at the beginning of the
But you
meeting.
can't legally give me a time limit.
I can. It's in our board policy.
Can I see that,
We've got-
please?
you
Because
can
I'm
look it up.
almost done.
You can look it up. I'll give you another couple seconds here to finish.
Yes, please,
wrap it up.
thank you. But with his spotless record, his tenure, his adoration by current and past students and parents, we cannot figure out any reason as to why you would change his pre-COVID title and his post-COVID title as an open position to replace him, other than some form of retaliation. If that is the case, that does not bode well for you. This demotion of title was not voted on by the board. It was not due to a bad record. It was not due to a series of bad performance reviews. He doesn't have a record of parent-student complaints. In fact, he has multiple letters of parent-student satisfaction. So, Mr. Stein, you must see how the community and parents and students can only see this decision was made in retaliation of some sorts. If it is because it was a medically excused remote teacher, that is highly illegal and against ADA. If this is for some other opinion-based retaliation, it is still highly frowned upon in the legal eyes. I know this as I was in charge of hiring and firing people for 12 years in my career life. And some of those years were in union. I suggest that you and the board and the teachers union reevaluate your decisions before they become more public than just this recorded meeting. I do have another letter from,
Your time is up, Mrs. Miller.
so if it's representing somebody else, I cannot speak for somebody else and give them their 5 minutes?
Correct, your time is up. If you want to leave the letter, you can leave the letter.
I would like to see a copy of those rules.
We'll get it for you after the meeting. Erin Hamstra.
Hi. First off, I want to thank the board members for their time and opportunity to speak this evening. The reason I'm here this evening is to speak about Illinois Bill SB 818. It's a comprehensive sex education bill. It's currently on the desk of the governor waiting to be signed. The bill itself actually uses modest language, okay? It uses age appropriateness, comprehensive personal health, and safety and sexual health standards. However, the bill itself is anything but modest, age appropriate, or safe. The bill mandates a curriculum that is quite radical, and I want it out of the schools. These standards, stretching from kindergarten to 12th grade, were developed by outside special interest groups, one being Planned Parenthood, one of the leading abortion industries in our state and in an entire nation. Let me just take a few examples. I could go on and on. I know there's a time limit, so I will keep it short. Let's begin with kindergarten, okay? Kindergarten to 4th grade, okay? The approved curriculum includes rights, respect, responsibility, the 3 R's. It's perfect, and then also it's perfectly normal. It's a book backed by Planned Parenthood. You could find it online. In kindergarten, in the curriculum for the 3 R's, this is what the facilitator would say, okay? They'll go over the body parts of both boys and girls in kindergarten in the same room. The facilitator will describe the sex act to a 5-year-old, saying, I quote, "The vagina has elasticity and can adjust to the size of a penis or allow a developed fetus to pass from the uterus out of the body." End quote. Another one, quote, "The clitoris located between the top of the labia minora and the clitoral hood is a small body of spongy tissue that is highly sensitive. The clitoris and the surrounding tissue contain many nerve endings, making the entire area very sensitive to indirect and direct touch." So, they're teaching 5-year-olds. I have a 5-year-old. 5-year-old, what sexual intercourse is and where babies come out. I assure you, board members, he is not ready for this. Okay? Not ready for it at all. I can tell you he wouldn't understand this vocabulary. He wouldn't even know how to pronounce it. In fact, I actually had to look up one of those before I even came here. Grade 4. This is an age 9. I have a 9-year-old. So this is grade 4 to 5. I have a handout, and my printer was not working appropriately, so if you can share, I would appreciate it. I have a handout from the pages of It's Perfectly Normal. I think the handouts speak for themselves, but let me just make a couple things a little bit clear that will be in the handout. Okay? It gives explicit details of sexual intercourse, oral sex, and anal sex and masturbation. How to appropriately do those things. Children will also have to define and explain the differences between cisgender, transgender, gender non-binary, gender expansive, and gender identity. Okay? Age 9. I can assure you, my 9-year-old does not need to know how to masturbate, does not need to know how to perform anal sex. Okay? Grade 6, 7, 8, 12. Okay? We're starting at age 12 here. They use a curriculum called Making a Difference. They also use the 3 R's. This is a comprehensive K through 12, and a number of websites. In this curriculum, the following question is asked by the facilitator. Quote, with all the messages teens are receiving about sex, what are some of the ways people express their sexual feelings to themselves or other people? End quote. Acceptable answers include oral sex, masturbation, grinding, anal sex, touching each other's genitals, vaginal intercourse. And it says, again, quote, if the students are hesitant to answer these questions, end quote, this is my thing, rightly so, they're 12. The teacher is told to ask prompting questions like, what kind of sex can people have by themselves? What other things might people do with their mouths? What kinds of things can people do with their hands? What other words do we use for touching? The teacher is then to make sure the students, mind you, again, 12, understand the definition of vaginal intercourse, oral sex, anal sex, and masturbation. At the end of the curriculum, the standards. All right, I'm going to end with this, okay? And then I will send you, and I actually did already, send each of you board members this information where I'm getting it from, okay? The legislation endangers our young children. I'm not talking about high school. I could go on into high school what they're doing. This is our young children, okay? What can the board do, okay? It's on the desk of the governor, right? What can you do? The bill allows for Peatone School District to opt out of this sex education course. I move that the board does just that. Throw out this curriculum. Do not let it near our children. I don't trust the government to teach sex education, sex morals, gender, things like that to our kids. I trust my parents. Look at these parents that are here. Look at them here. They can do that. We have responsible parents in this district. It's not up to the state to decide that. I really urge you, board members, to throw this curriculum out. You get that opportunity. Thank you.
So this bill was passed out of legislation this last month?
It's out of House, and it barely passed the House. It got exactly 60 votes in order for it to pass. It's on the governor's desk as of today. It hasn't been signed yet. I'm hoping it won't. I don't have too much trust in that.
Were you reading a lot what you read directly from the legislation or from the...
This is from particularly curriculum. The legislation, like I said, is very, uses, cultural appropriateness, gender, the age appropriateness, but when you actually look at the curriculum that special interest groups like Planned Parenthood are pushing, that's what the curriculum is extremely disturbing. And that's what I sent all of you, so please do your own research, and I really appreciate if you did that.
And the legislation says that school districts do have the option to opt out.
This is the thing, okay? So Planned Parenthood really wanted and the special interest groups wanted to make this mandatory, and I don't think they would have gotten the votes. So you are allowed to opt out. Obviously, families are allowed to opt out, but here's the thing, what they did. You can't teach sex ed now. So if they cared so much for your kids and getting them to know, it's their way or the highway. Okay, so I wish the board knew about it a little bit sooner, and we could have maybe contacted, and you still can. You still can contact your governor. Call them out and leave messages. And if you're board members, contact people, your families, things like that, and do what you can to stop it. And because maybe he won't sign it, we can We can pray.
Right.
So, we're at.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Hal Hamstra?
I also would like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak. I'd also like to thank Aaron for digging a little deeper on this issue so we can have all the information, no matter how horrifying it may be. I also want to speak in opposition to this bill and this curriculum. I'd like to speak shortly on just 2 points. First being sexual morality. Now, I am a Christian, and I believe that sexual activity should be within the confines of marriage between a man and a woman. But I am told time and time again that I cannot impose my religious beliefs on others in a public institution. Yet the state, right now as we speak, is seeking to impose secular humanist orthodoxy, which is a religion, onto our children. This is a gross double standard. And it's a violation of a parent's rights to instill values in their children. And I would encourage this board to reject this bill and this curriculum and have the school teach biology and leave the teaching of sexual morality at home with the parents where it belongs. Second, I want to take the focus off the children for just a second if we could and actually take a look at the teachers. I would encourage the board to protect its teachers. Approval of this curriculum may cause teachers to have to act against their conscience. We also may lose many good teachers who will refuse to teach this curriculum. Not only that, but it could also put teachers in danger of becoming victims of physical assault. What would the interaction look like between a concerned father and a teacher who just taught his 9-year-old daughter how to masturbate? I think it could get pretty nasty. I urge you to protect your teachers as well by rejecting this bill. I mean, the fact that we even have to have this conversation is showing me just how fallen our society has become. I mean, sex ed for 5-year-olds and anal sex and masturbation for 9-year-olds? God have mercy on us all. I yield back.
Thank you. Shannon?
Just for the record, I'm Shannon Unick. I think they've covered it well, although I don't understand how this bill is not raising up people to be sexually molested as well. Let's experiment. It's free for all. These are natural things to do. That is raising up our children to touch inappropriately in a classroom. It does not belong in our classrooms.
Thank you. Kim Chenoweth?
Good evening. I just wanted to thank everybody for their time and consideration tonight. And when you're speaking later about the replacement football scoreboard, I'd like you to consider that we're representing our school district and we're representing the coaches, the players, and the parents when we are hosting an event. And that's not just football. I know that we have hosted in the past a soccer tournament on those fields as well. I don't know if that'll be in the future plans with the soccer schedule, but I know that the boys' high school has also hosted a tournament on those fields. It would be nice in the future if the girls could also host, or boys soccer host regionals, sectional games as well on that field, if we had the ability with a proper working scoreboard. My hope is that we don't just consider replacing the existing scoreboard with the most economical, cheapest option, as we have proven that we are responsible enough to take care of our assets and keep them working for a long time. I hope that we also consider that we need a replacement that will last a long time and not something that we'll have to be discussing again in 10, 15 years. There are many children that would benefit from a replacement scoreboard. I was hoping that by this point in time, this would have already been done. I'm not gonna lie, my son will now be a senior player next season. And when we moved here in 2012, I didn't think that we would still be discussing a scoreboard. I thought it would have been obvious that it would have been replaced by now. I'm hopeful that we can get this done and all the future players and the coaches and the parents can be proud of our field, because it was quite embarrassing this season when it did not work and the visitors had to stop watching the game and go look up at our box to see a time or a score for their own team. And that's, we're representing our town and our community, so please consider that when you're making your vote on the football scoreboard tonight. Thank you.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? Sure. About a year ago, a referendum was put forward to the community to increase revenue, to pay for a lot of things that this district needs. And that was what was presented. Some of them were Chromebooks, which were later funded by the government due to COVID. But there were a lot of items on that list: air conditioning, lighting upgrades, a lot of different things, teacher salaries, a lot of things. Where would you put this on that list? I mean, how would you prioritize the scoreboard when it comes to that list that was presented to the community just over a year ago?
Mr. Staub, I'm going to actually, if you wouldn't mind, we have this for action and discussion tonight, so technically this is not Q&A, so if you could hold that until we get to scoreboard discussion.
Well, it was
that would
public
be great.
comment, and I just was asking for her opinion, is all.
It's up to you if you want to comment or if you want to wait till we get to the scoreboard discussion.
Somebody else just asked a question before.
It's up to you.
Yeah, it's up to you. It's just an opinion.
I'll decline. Thank you.
Dakota, I don't have a last name.
Southern, Southarg. Thank you for your time, everybody. I really appreciate it. So I am newer to this town, but I've been familiarizing myself with the goings-on in this town. I'm here to address the decision on demoting Mr. Petmuller and Ms. Clayton. Now, we've already heard testimonies of how good teachers they are, so I'm not going to spend my time doing that. Rather, I want you to consider the flaws of the decision-making that goes on in these board meetings. I myself am a teacher, so I thought, what better way than to watch some board meetings, online of course. In doing so, there are some things I have observed. First of all, when someone questions the board, even if it's another board member, the other board members speak to that person in a very degrading and negative tone. Any board meeting that I've been to, people's opinions were respected even if they're not agreed. Just saying. Second of all, with the exception of one board member, excuse me for not having all of your names memorized yet, you all seem to vote unanimously even when you don't know answers to questions on topics. For example, when questioned about finances, every time the board has to ask someone who is not on the board, even though they already placed their vote on the financial spending. Shouldn't you know the facts before you vote? I mean, I don't know, when I vote for something, I want to know the facts, just saying. Third point. You have many special board meetings, is what I like to call them. I write down the dates of the board meetings, and then mysteriously, these special board meetings pop up, and I'm not sure as to why there seems to be little or no notice about them, such as today's. I wish someone could explain to me why I thought there was one on the 21st, and then out of the blue, just 2 days ago, today's popped up. If I hadn't looked, if people didn't look every single day, how will they know? Seems very suspicious. Fourth point. Now, I listen to all the positive talk in town about these teachers. I don't know them personally, I don't know them super well, but I know the community respects them. I had at one point considering teaching in this district. What changed my mind is that your retention rate is below the state average, and your pay is far below state average. If these teachers are as good as the community members say they are, I think based on your retention rate and poor pay, isn't it common sense if they want to stay working in this district, you should be begging good teachers to stay, not pushing them away. As a newcomer and a fresh pair of eyes, I have to say, I strongly feel you are making a big mistake. Good teachers are hard to come by. Like I said, I don't know them on a personal level, but I know they are well respected in the community. Consider the testimonies of others before me, and I'm sure there's more to come. Consider how you're affecting their lives. Consider the good of the school and the students, and just the fact that good teachers are hard to come by. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Tiffany Voss.
Thank you. I just also wanted to comment on the sex ed bill that is trying to be passed. Hal and Aaron really put most of the points down very well, I think, but I just want to stress the fact that it really should be the parents' responsibility to instill these teachings, our beliefs in how things should happen within relationships, outside of relationships, when we think our kids are ready to learn certain things or not ready to learn certain things. And I don't think that that should be, first of all, put on the teachers. This is really a lot to ask of the teachers. And a lot of these parents, I don't think truly understand what is going to go into this curriculum that they are pushing along with this bill. If you look closely to what Aaron handed out, a lot of it's cartoon porn. That's what it is. And we're going to be giving these to our babies and then send them home to their parents going, what the heck just happened? I thought this was, just age appropriate. And it's up to who knows who to decide what age what is appropriate at. And I think that should stay at home. We don't need teachers. We don't need them doing, if it's all or nothing, the parents need to step up and be parents and teach their sex ed at home and not rely on the school to do it, as well as everything else that they're already relying on the school to do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Katie Stout.
All right, before I get started, I did pull up your rules, so I am asking for an extension on that 5 minutes because I have multiple things from people that I would like to read.
We'll give you the same 5 minutes that we gave everybody else. You can pick and choose whatever you want to read, and you're welcome to leave.
Your rules say I can ask for an extension.
And I'm going to hold you to the
asking for
same
that.
5 minutes that everybody else had. If you go a couple of seconds over, I'll let you do what they did, but I'm going to hold you to that same
I guess
time
I'll
frame.
try to read fast.
Awesome.
All right. First, I'm going to read a few comments from social media because you've probably heard that we have posted things on social media about this topic of Mr. Pettmuller and Mrs. Clayton. So first, my kids have had Eric as a teacher way back when he started. Great teacher, David Taylor. We had him as a 5th grade teacher. My kids liked Pet, Robin Greenfield. My boys have had a lot of teachers in Peatone, grades K through 8. Some made more of an impact than others, but all were very good. But I don't think any of them were beloved to the extent of Mr. Pettmuller and Mr. Phillips. My kids still talk about them today. John Anderson. The next one is from Beth Smith. Dear District 207U, I am writing a letter in support of Mr. Eric Pettmuller. I first met Mr. Pettmuller 7 years ago when he taught my now graduated senior. At that time, Mr. P, as my son fondly refers to him, was teaching 5th grade at Connor Shaw Center. Mr. P was fantastic at bonding with 5th grade boys and enticing them to be motivated learners. He was also good at helping the 3 elementary schools integrate into one class. Mr. P taught those students more than a core curriculum. He taught them about life and took a personal interest in developing each of his students into the best version of themselves that they could be. Mr. P made sure they were all prepared for junior high and more challenging workload. For my oldest son, Mr. P was the first teacher to wonder why he was struggling in both reading and math. He suspected it was more than laziness, and he encouraged us to have our son tested, which led to the discovery that our son was both dyslexic and dysgraphic. Once we had that diagnosis, Mr. P was able to target the methods he used to help my son, and by the end of the year, my son was at grade level for both math and reading. He taught my son techniques to assist in his learning and ways to break down work, which have been invaluable throughout the rest of his education. Mr. P then went on to coach boys basketball at the junior high. My son was fortunate enough to play on the team. This experience truly was a positive experience. Mr. P again was the coach who taught the boys the value of teamwork, hard work, and time management. Mr. P instilled in the team that winning wasn't everything, but doing your personal best was. He taught accountability. More recently, my youngest son had Mr. Pettmuller for 3rd grade at Peatone Elementary School. Once again, this was a fantastic experience. I could see that Mr. P had kept his energy and enthusiasm for teaching his students, but his teaching modalities have grown and expanded with his years of experience. Mr. P had made learning fun. He was able to be inclusionary, teaching both the struggling students and the gifted students at their place level, keeping both engaged. My youngest son developed a rock-solid math foundation in his class. He was driven to show Mr. P how much he could absorb in math and science. Those skills, well inherent to him, were encouraged and thrived in supportive classroom Mr. P created. My son left 3rd grade prepared, confident, motivated, and ready to tackle middle school. When COVID changed our learning modalities, all teachers did their best to adapt to the online format. Most longed to get back to the classroom and to their students in person. Mr. Pettmuller missed his students too, but he valued the students that were not coming back to the in-person classroom. He stepped up and chose to be the educator to those students needed and deserved. He adapted all lessons to online learning forum and worked with remote learners to keep them on the same pace as their as their in-person classmates. He made sure they were engaged and not asleep at their keyboards. This was a unique challenge. I have heard from friends and neighbors how much it was hugely appreciated by the parents who chose this for their students. I hope that the board looks at all the vacancies that there will be for the 2021-2022 school year and reward this excellent teacher for stepping up and allowing him to choose the position which best fits his personality and professional needs. I know every student in his classroom will benefit from having Mr. Pettmuller as their teacher. Respectfully, Beth Helm Smith. Oops. Next, this one is from the DeMoss family. Eric Pettmuller and Mrs. Clayton and Michelle Clayton are invaluable teachers who accomplished the impossible by taking the worst school year ever and making it the best school year ever. Teaching remote this past year came with a ton of obstacles. It meant having to create and/or alter curriculum to truly inspire a love of learning, self-motivation, and dedication. This was the only way to make this year a real success. While competing with an at-home distractions and behaviors, they exceeded the goal of just educating students for the year, as they orchestrated lifestyles of learning in each of their students. For example, Eric Pettmuller inspired my daughter to research. Can I finish this one?
Go ahead and finish that one.
Well, you know what? I'll read mine. All right. Tonight, I'm going to start with a quote. This is from me. Well, the quote is from somebody else. But the mediocre teacher tells. The good teacher explains. The superior teacher demonstrates. The great teacher inspires. William Arthur Ward. The great teacher inspires, and that is why I'm here tonight, speaking in support of Mr. Pettmuller. I remember getting teacher assignments for the 2019-2020 school year and watching my son beam with excitement when I told him that he got Mr. Pettmuller. The excitement never ended throughout the 2019-2020 school year. Mr. Pett made all learning activities fun and engaging. One of the most memorable things for my son was earning the giant belt, like the world champion fighting belt. He was the reigning champ multiple times for knowing his state capitals. Mr. Pett was super encouraging, kept telling him, keep practicing, keep that belt, defend your title. Mr. Pett always encourages these kids, always has fun competitions for them to engage them in learning. My son said even Mr. Pett made silent ball fun. Even when the pandemic hit, we all had to go remote in March of 2020. Mr. Pett did not let that stop his creative juices from flowing. He kept the online learning fun and engaging. He used things in his house to teach math, making the kids laugh when he made silly lessons. It has been no doubt that Mr. Pettmuller is the best teacher my son has ever had in Peatone School District. He listened to the kids. He truly inspires the kids. So when I heard that he was being made a permanent sub, I was sincerely baffled as to why. Why? A teacher like Mr. Pett shouldn't be made a sub to implement some other teacher's lessons plan, or let's be real, let's just show a movie. That's what subs do. I mean, Mr. Pett needs to be in a classroom to implement his own lesson plans. He needs to be in the same classroom daily to inspire these students. He needs to create his family for the year, his little family, his classroom. They are a family. He is a once-in-a-lifetime teacher that the children will remember forever. He is a well-loved teacher who has been with this district for 15 years. He should have his own classroom again this year. We all know we have a problem with teacher retention. So why are we basically demoting a teacher that has been here for 15 years, bleeds blue, lives in this town? Not only does he teach here, but he lives here. And we're making him a permanent sub to just come in here and fill roles. So I'm asking you, please give Mr. Pettmuller's third grade classroom back that he had pre-pandemic. It's not someone, why are we gonna go hire someone new who's just here to get their start? We all know that happens here, guys. Let's take the blinders off. He deserves so much more. But even more, you know who deserves more? Our children deserve him in the classroom daily, his classroom. Not a sub. Thank you.
David Piper.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the board for allowing me to speak today. I'm here in support of the scoreboard. I think that scoreboard was here when I was playing football up to this point. So we've done a good job of nursing it along. I think it's time to replace this scoreboard. I understand the fiscal concerns that we have in a lot of those things, but I think we all understand how important sports are for everybody. This is a great opportunity. We host the Diablo soccer tournament every year, which also brings in revenue to the school. Now with the new scoreboard, we could actually host the girls regional soccer tournament, which would also bring in some revenue as long as the football stuff as well. I think if we go in the digital age to be able to buy a scoreboard, that one is going to promote some of those school activities, that we could promote what we're doing in the school as well as within the town and the village, is also going to help bring revenue and people back to the school. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would hope that you guys would vote positively for the replacement of the scoreboard. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Hendricker.
Good evening. You guys all know why I'm here, because you got my email last week, but I too am here in support of the scoreboard. I have to echo what Kim and what Dave have already said. This is something that's needed. It's needed for our students. It's needed for our community. When you see on Facebook people who don't even show up at football games posting about the fact that our scoreboard doesn't work as they're walking down the sidewalk, walking their dog for the evening, that's embarrassing to our community. It's embarrassing to our school district. These kids don't deserve to be embarrassed like that in front of their peers that they compete against in every sport they play. I mean, my son in particular is a multi-sport athlete, as well as these other parents' sons who are multi-sport athletes. They see these kids at every tournament that they go to, every game that they play, and it's embarrassing when these kids get made fun of for the fact that, oh, Piatone, that's the field with the scoreboard that doesn't work. Yeah, they can't do anything to take care of their stuff. Dave said it. We have taken care of it. But the time has come. It's been here a very long time. We've maintained it as long as we can. It does need to be replaced. These children deserve this. And you have to remember, guys, these sports are what encourage many of these students to actually perform in school. It's what keeps them engaged in school, because they have to keep their grades to keep their eligibility. And if we don't encourage them by supporting them on the field, what reason do they have to perform in the classroom if they're not fundamentally motivated in an educational direction? We have to give them every opportunity that we can in order to push them forward educationally speaking. And if sports is a way to do that, by all means, we need to push them forward. We have a huge rate of, I don't want to call it a failure rate, but our ineligibility list was very lengthy in every sport this year across the board. We've got to do what we can to encourage these kids. And so I know you've gotten my emails. 4 of you responded. Thank you for those responses. That's the most I've ever gotten when I emailed the board. So thank you. I appreciate it. But I do want you to know we truly need this. The community needs this. The school needs this. The kids need this. So I would encourage you to go big or go home. That's what we tell our kids. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Slager.
I'm here to support what Erin and Hal and Mrs. Onink has done. I am a parent that actually homeschools her kids because I want to protect them for a little bit, but I think the kids in this community deserve to be protected. I think the parents in this community deserve support from us to give them the rights. I don't want to see the state just encroach more on our school and tell our teachers and our parents what to teach our kids. I ask that you please look deeper into the curriculum that is required for this bill and think very carefully before you decide if this is something we should continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That brings us tonight. We've had a lot of conversation about a couple of topics, but our first action item tonight, we're going to have a little discussion around the scoreboard. We had started to have some discussion. I know, Mr. Stein, you have gotten some different quotes with some different options on those. There was some interest from the board for you to get some quotes with regard to the electronic portion of the board as well. I know that you sent those quotes out to the board, but if you wouldn't mind, before we take a vote this evening and decide on which one it is we'll be voting on, if you could just take a moment and go over that so that the audience is aware.
Absolutely. There were some differences in the information that was provided by each of the 3 different companies. So as I sent that information to you last week, I believe it was, basically in talking with the 3 companies, Nevco, Fairplay, and Correct Digital, all of them were recommending based on, they have sort of these standard appraisals that they do, where they say based on the number of seats that you have in a stadium, based on whether or not you have seats that go further into the end zone, so on and so forth, they kind of make a recommendation of the size of the board. Well, one of those companies provided us with multiple sizes, but 2 of the companies only provided us with a 25-foot board and a 26-foot board. So to try to kind of compare apples to apples, I broke down in what I sent you. Nevco provided us with information about a 24-foot board. Fairplay provided information, and Nevco also provided information about a 32-foot board. Fairplay provided information on a 26-foot board, and Correct Digital provided information on a 25-foot board. It seems as if, and Dave, please correct me if I misspeak on any of these things, it seems as if all 3 of these companies feel that we can use the current structural steel that is there. Is that correct? Although maybe with a little bit of bracing in the back, kind of.
Correct had some reservations, but Nevco and Fairplay
were pretty spot on with that. Yeah. So when I broke it down for you, the boards basically came out trying to compare apples to apples. The Nevco 24-foot board came in a little over $26,000. The Fairplay 26-foot board came in at $27,500. And the Correct Digital board, which was a 25-foot board, came in at $30,300. Now those prices that I have talked about there all include installation. Okay. Now as a reminder, when we talked about this, oh golly, I don't know, it was probably about maybe a month ago or so. One of the other boards that Nevco sent to us as an option was a 32-foot board, which is what's up there right now, is a 32-foot board. That Nevco board, kind of trying to keep apples compared to apples with the other 3 boards that I just mentioned, that total price with installation comes in right around right under $32,000. So $31,867. Now the Nevco boards, very specifically, they also put in information about full color LED messaging boards. So for the 24-foot Nevco board, that LED message center would be an additional $23,700. And for the 32-foot Nevco, the LED message board would be a little bit over $32,000.
Steve, is that the portion that changes and scrolls like we have out here?
Well, it's similar to that. It's not that height.
Yeah, right.
You know.
But the same theory.
It's the same theory. It doesn't.
We could sell.
Yeah, you could put. Yeah, exactly. You could say, the first quarter is sponsored by Terry's board. Something along those lines.
I mean, you could sell like parent shout outs maybe.
You could.
Just depending on.
Yeah, we would have to be, that would be something that would have to be very well planned out. I wouldn't want that, falling on a secretary, every week of a football game. It would be something that, maybe we would, excuse me, maybe we would have something where you have a date by the middle of August where you have to get these in. We already know what our home games are. You can put in an advertisement. You can put in a shout out. Happy birthday, Timmy. Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad. That kind of thing with a fee. Obviously, if we were doing some sort of advertising for businesses, I would think the fee would be, considerably higher than somebody just doing, a shout out to their child or something like that. So.
Hey Dave, when you say the remaining, we can use the structure that's there now, you're talking about just the supports, right?
Correct, yeah, the 4 pylons are in the ground.
The scoreboard would still set right now.
Yeah.
Actually, that's, the one out there now has clamps on it. The ones that would come out now would be prefabricated with mounts on it. So what he would do is put in horizontal supports and then mount the board to those.
For the Nevco?
For the Nevco and the Fair.
And that's all included in the installation price?
Yeah. And Correct Digital also said that they would use those supports maybe with some modification.
Mm-hmm.
How long have we had this board, Steve? I know we've had some discussion around.
1984.
1984.
So what is that, 37 years old?
Before we move forward on this, and put it to vote, as I asked one of the speakers who declined to give opinion, the way I see it, anytime we're looking at spending money and taking a vote on spending money, we have 3 options. We're talking about spending around $30,000. So with that, I see it as, if we spend the $30,000 on this scoreboard, which I don't think we can debate whether or not we could use an upgraded one. If we spend $30,000 on this scoreboard, I see it as we're choosing to not spend $30,000 somewhere else, or we're choosing to take on an additional $30,000 in debt because we're already overspending our revenue every year. So my question was, where do we prioritize this stance? And I haven't seen the other half of the equation presented. I see that you're suggesting that we need the board. I see that we have costs associated with it, but it's the other half of it. What's being put to the side that we otherwise could spend $30,000 on? Or are we taking on an additional $30,000 in debt? Are we overspending an additional $30,000? So where does this come in on the big picture? So I'm not ready to say whether or not we need a board. I mean, the board might be broken, we could use a new one, but what's the other half? I mean, a year ago, we had a lot of priorities. And so where does this stand? How do we take a vote on this without understanding it in the big picture? What is this more important than that? Is this more important than the education? Is this more important than music class? What is this more important than? What's being sacrificed to spend this $30,000? Or are we saying, no, we want this board so bad, we're going to take on an additional overspending of $30,000? And so to make the vote without the full picture, I just don't see how we can do that. If you can share the full picture, let's vote. Where do we all stand on it? But I still don't even see the full picture yet. So is there anything more you can offer to that picture?
What is it you're looking for, Tim?
A year ago, we didn't have enough money for Chromebooks. And so we got money from the government for Chromebooks, but now this year we're ready to spend $30,000 on a scoreboard. What aren't we getting because we're getting the scoreboard? Or are we getting everything we want and the scoreboard?
I think sometimes the tricky part of the people who sit up here and the administration is that sometimes you do have to make decisions when things arise that have to be done. And I would say that while the budget is a living, breathing document, I will say that I'm not so sure we have to cut something out, but I am sure we have to have a scoreboard. Do you think we can go without a scoreboard?
Well, let me ask this. What are the parameters of the budget? Are we looking to make a flat budget this year? Are we looking to overspend by $1.5 million this year? What are our parameters? How do we fit this into the budget? I guess my other question is, which budget is this being spent from? Is this current year budget or is this next year's budget? That I don't think
this would fall into next year.
This is going to fall into next year because of time of installation.
Yeah, because anything that's going to be paid after our board meeting for June, so June 21st, will be in the town next year's budget.
Okay. So this is going into next year's budget, which hasn't even been produced yet.
Right. Yep. As a board, you have the authority to spend to spend next year's funds before the budget is approved.
No, I understand the authority, I just don't understand the logic behind that at this juncture.
So I guess my question to you would be, what would be your suggestion for not having a scoreboard?
Well, I don't have that solution, that's not mine to come up with.
But it is ours to provide the things that the kids need. So we asked Mr. Stein to go out and to get quotes regarding the scoreboard. I know we've talked at length over the last 2 years with regard to the numerous times that the scoreboard has gone out, flickered, been out. I mean, I don't want to get beat up, but I know we have fans out there where it's like you're sitting there and the game's going on and then no scoreboard. Personally, I think we've done our due diligence with nursing that scoreboard along as long as we could and making fixes where we could. I definitely think we've reached the point where if we're going to continue hosting interscholastic play with other schools in a football setting or a soccer setting on that field, I think you provide a scoreboard that works, is my opinion.
So if we're short $30,000 to get the top teacher that we want, we're going to be okay with that.
I didn't say that.
But that's the type of prioritization that goes into budgeting. And if we're going to make decisions on spending $30,000 out of a budget without seeing those priorities, I just don't see how that's proven.
I guess I'll ask again, what would be your suggestion to not having a scoreboard?
Again, that's not mine. That's not mine to do.
So you want somebody else to figure that out?
That's not my job to do,
Okay.
Madam President.
Okay. Any other comments from the board or regarding scoreboard options or choices or questions?
Mr. Stein, does that scoreboard include the decorative archway?
Yes. The ones that I gave you in your brief, those all have the truss and the logo on it. That's non-illuminated. But, you know, again, if you want to go with the upgrade of the board that has the video, not video, I should say the message center, that is what increases the cost. Yeah.
And this would be considered both football and soccer scoreboard?
Yes, you could use it for both, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the people that spoke tonight, I mean, it's embarrassing. I mean, it's been embarrassing for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it needed to be replaced prior to this. I mean, you're absolutely right about that. It's a reflection on the community, and the athletes are probably somewhat embarrassed, especially this last year with the way the scoreboard is malfunctioning. And, we just need to do what we need to do and replace that board. And I'm for replacing it with the messaging center as well as the decorative archway. I think if we're going to do it, we need to do it right. I don't want to put something out there and then 5 years later we're going back and saying, hey, you know, we don't really think that's what this is a long-term investment as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
And so we need to do it right up front. And that's just my opinion.
I also think, sorry,
Go ahead.
the 24-second play clock should definitely be considered too as an option to add on. You know, it'd be hard as a coach, as a quarterback, to know when they set the ball in play and blow a whistle, that clock's ticking, and the quarterback and the offensive team doesn't know until there's 5 seconds left, and the official, the back judge, starts counting off. I think we should do that now. That 24-second play clock, because that's going to require some wiring, and the installation company is already there, putting in connecting the wiring to the new scoreboard. And I can't make any sense in my mind why we would go with a smaller board. The existing board is 32 foot. I can't see any reason why we would want a smaller board. Visually, I don't think that would look, I think that would look terrible. Even a 26-foot board, I think would be too small when you're used to that size. That's a lot of difference.
Jody, did you have something?
Sorry.
I don't know if we have the answer to this. Do we have an organization or something set up? There have been a couple parents that have contacted me regarding donations.
Yeah, the Athletic Booster Club is willing to serve as a clearinghouse if businesses or individuals would like to make a donation to the board, to the scoreboard. One of the things that we've kind of thought about is making a donation to the scoreboard sign that maybe we hang up in the high school somewhere as a thank you based on a certain dollar amount. You know, the individual or the company gets their name on a little placard on there as a thank you for that. So yeah, we can definitely do something like that. Absolutely.
You mentioned the availability of setting up an account at the local branch of the bank that people can make deposits there versus, what did you say?
The Athletic Booster Club.
Which do you think is going to be easier access for the general public?
I think just going through the Athletic Booster Club, I think it's an organization that people are familiar with, particularly our high school parents, as well as the corporations that are in town. So.
Can we also set up something at the bank for people?
That's my curiosity.
I can talk with the attorney about that. Yeah, I mean, his suggestion was that we use, either the Athletic Booster Club or the foundation for that. But I can talk with him about setting up.
The concern I would have, I know it would be well known among the parents of the athletes, but I'm thinking of the greater community.
Sure.
That aren't involved.
Sure.
Directly, we might be able to advertise even through the bank. For everybody that banks there, might not have a clue, and they might be more apt to make donations just individually.
And those donations can definitely be earmarked and specifically put towards the sign?
Yes.
I think that's one of the advantages of going through the Booster Club is that they're kind of doing that record keeping. If they get a donation from you or from any other community member, it's for this, they're keeping the record, and then they would write one check to the district to say, here's the X number of $1,000s that were raised for the scoreboard. It's kind of a cleaner sort of record.
Yes.
Wouldn't that same be true with the bank though? I mean, it's one account set up just for this one project. I mean, there doesn't need to be an end date, does there, with the bank?
No, not necessarily.
So if the board approves tonight $30,000 and, the public watches the video and everybody wants to rally and not spend an extra 30 in deficit spending this year, and instead the whole community rallies and says, no, everybody throws in, $100 and we pay for this thing, it might take 2 years, but if we kept that account open, people could keep donating to it, couldn't they?
Oh, sure.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, at some point we would have to make a transfer, say we're going to now put this into our general fund account. Like,
but I guess
we'd have to set something up periodically. We'd have to, the board would have to approve that, all those things. But it's not like I could just go over to the bank and say, hey, do we have any in there? Can you put it in the other account now? It'd have to be a formal process, but we'd certainly be open to all options.
Okay.
Dave, did I cut you off before?
I think all three of those options included advertising panels on them, plus you could use the video board for advertising.
I'm not so positive about that, Dave.
Nefco was, did they?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I think you are right, Dave. But the bottom right and the bottom left.
Static ones, right?
Yeah.
Did Nefco have three? A 32-foot by 32-foot?
I think you're talking about these portions right here, these static portions here.
I think the one that was all the way along here. Or maybe it was it was this
it's
one.
This
They
one.
archived
Yeah,
that video. Yeah. So,
but that's where we put that blue on it. Yeah. So there are two static, a bottom left and a bottom right, that could have a semi-permanent advertisement on there, probably for a fairly hefty donor.
And some of them we talked to, they suggested going like
5
5-year
years
terms instead of chasing people every
Right.
year.
Something that Roger mentioned too, that, we've heard from, I believe he said the people have spoken, and he's right. I received several emails in the past few weeks in support of this project, and we heard several people here tonight speak in support of the project, and I've not heard anyone directly speak in opposition to the project. Okay, and I am not in opposition to the project. It's simply the whole picture is all I was hoping to see. So I don't see or hear opposition. I'm just really not sure where the money's coming from. And so I have a hard time throwing full support behind something without knowing where the money's coming from. That's pretty much where I stand.
Any other?
Yeah, I had,
Yep.
Rick mentioned the delay a game timer.
Yep.
And it says, set of 2. Are those timers placed in the end zones?
Yeah, well, one would be, my assumption is one would be placed like on one of the steel girders, you know, on the, underneath the actual scoreboard. The other one, we would probably have to have it mounted in the other, you know, back behind the other end zone.
Like you could put it up on the flagpole, maybe.
Sometimes they are,
Sometimes they're
sometimes it
mobile.
is actually mobile, Roger, where you
Yeah.
can just set it on the ground as well. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that right now, but
So it sounds like that's something we should be included, because that's probably make it easier
Well-
for the officials and the players and fans
For
and
sure.
everybody involved.
sure.
And I think for future regulations, that might come down.
They might
the
require
line.
I would think that's a possibility. You know, if we
If you host
have playoff games, host playoff games,
Yeah.
that might be an IHSA requirement that you gotta have in the future.
Well, I think
I couldn't, I'm surprised that
I
it's
think
not
it's something
now.
we probably should include in.
Yeah.
And I think we need to establish an account at one of the local banks for donations. And I would say I'll write a check for $1,000 to start that account out. And I think that by starting an account, I'm just guessing that you will pay for half that board. I mean, I think the community will support that, and I'd be surprised if we don't pay for half that board with donations.
Thank you.
And I'll write the first check for it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. All right. Does anybody have a preference with regard to a motion regarding one of the choices on the scoreboard?
I'll make a motion to approve the 32-inch scoreboard from Nevco, and along with the electronic messaging board and the 24-second clock. With installation, we're looking at approximately $71,000. I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second.
Mr. Bettenhausen?
Yes.
Mr. Staub?
No.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. Moe?
Yes?
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Yu?
Yes.
All right. Action item this evening, report number 84, is the addendum to the approval of the personnel report. I'll entertain a motion to approve that report.
So moved.
Second.
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Staub?
several people spoke tonight in support of teachers that once held some of these positions. And I see this moved to vote already. And so I'd love to understand some background information on it, but it's already been moved to vote. I was really hoping to get the question answered to see if these previous teachers had been interviewed for these open positions.
Well, I can tell you that technically the board isn't allowed to discuss personnel in open session, but I don't know if there are a few things that
I mean,
Debbie Kaiser or Mr. Stein want to
Mrs.
add.
Kaiser, would you like to address that question?
Madam President, a point of order is this has already been moved to vote.
It hasn't been seconded yet.
It was seconded,
Who seconded?
I believe.
I second
Who
it.
seconded?
I call for the vote.
Oh,
I didn't do roll call yet, yeah.
I call
No
for
roll call has been done, so we can move to amend to table and go back to public comment.
we're not going to go back to public comment per se, but I will allow Mr. Stein to address this before we vote. I have The chair has not restated the motion that's on the table, so we have that
Sure.
opportunity to have discussion until then.
Sure. Mrs. Kaza, as union president, were there any concerns brought to you with regard to any of the transfers for these two individuals for the upcoming school year? No. And were you aware, because I'm not aware, of Mr. Putmuller applying for any of the positions that we're voting for tonight?
I'm not aware.
Neither am I. Dr. Bitton, you handle much of the interviewing in the district. Did Mr. Putmuller apply for any of the positions that we're voting on for tonight?
No.
No? So even though he was reassigned to one of these positions, which is not the first time that a teacher in the school district has been reassigned a position, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, even when the posting came up for the third grade position, he chose not to apply for it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Mr. Stein, did you, as long as we're making brief comment, did you have anything to add with regard to Mrs. Clayton?
Well, as far as Mrs. Clayton is concerned, Mrs. Clayton has worked with the students over at Pick for the last 2 years as a reading specialist. She did work as a remote learning teacher this year, teaching 4th and 5th grade students ELA and science. And I can see no better person than to help transition those students to the junior high school than a reading specialist who knows them and has worked with those children for the last 2 years. So this idea that some people have put out that this is some way a demotion, I would think that the union would have heard and they would have said to me that this is somehow a demotion of some sort. No one is losing salary, no one is losing benefits.
Why does somebody have to reapply for a position that was already theirs?
There's no entitlement to any position within the district. My last conversation with Mr. Petmuller was that he was looking forward to this position, that he thought he could be a benefit to students at PES. And I've known Eric since he was 13 years old because I was his 7th grade social studies teacher, and he and I had a very good relationship, and I have received no concerns from Mr. Petmuller personally or professionally with regards to this transfer.
Do you receive no concerns with him being a sub from him?
Mr. Petmuller is looking forward to this position, is all the information I have.
Was that from Mr. Putmuller himself?
I'm sorry?
That's a lie.
I'm a liar? Is that what you're saying to me?
So that statement is a lie.
Okay, well.
Any other
No,
things
ma'am.
you want to add? Debbie, any concerns from the union standpoint?
No.
Any complaints on the table?
No.
Anything else you want to add regarding those things?
All I will say is that our contract has not been broken.
Perfect. All right. Mr. Stout,
Roll call.
any other questions? Anyone?
Is this something that we need to vote today? Or in light of the public comments that seem to represent support, despite not hearing directly from Mr. Putmuller, is it something that we're ready to vote in a new position, or is this something you'd like to table until the next regularly scheduled meeting?
Is there a motion from a board member regarding report number 84? Any concerns with continuing with the motion that's on the table for report number 84?
No.
Oh, we'll have a roll call, Kathy.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mrs. Love?
Yes.
Mr. Yuthie?
Yes.
Mr. Bettenhausen?
Yes.
Mr. Stout?
No.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. Mel?
Yes.
All right, anything for executive session tonight? Anyone? All right.
I just want to say I appreciate the parents that came tonight, and in regards to the Senate Bill 818. This is just, I mean, once the State Board of Education got in place their culturally responsive teaching standards, and that was the start of this whole damn process. And it's just gonna keep coming at us. I mean, you're gonna have the 1619 project's gonna be here. You're gonna have the critical race theory gonna be here. They're gonna keep pushing that through. And I would tell parents that they need to keep coming up here. And if they see any of that being taught to their kids, they need to be here and let us know about it, because I want to know about it. And they need to be able to. That's all I'm going to say about that right now, but I'll have more to say later.
So,
I hope you do.
Thank you.
Mr. Stein, I believe one of the parents, it may have been Aaron, mentioned there was an opt-out policy written into the bill.
I'll look into that.
You'll
Absolutely.
look into that.
Yes.
If it's an all or nothing, you know, if we go with the nothing, then we all have to realize that sex education is completely out.
If I may make a comment, you can still teach biology, and that's what you need. This is up to the parents to teach anything moral. So that's all I'm gonna say. They're not telling you can't teach biology.
Yeah, anything you can provide with the opt-out information will be.
Yep.
All right, anything else from the membership this evening? All right, thank you to the parents that participated tonight. Appreciate your time. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone.